But Chun had learned long ago that houses kept secrets better than people. The operator's recording played in her mind, a child's whisper, terror pressed thin, then sounds of movement, an adult male voice, silence. "Mike, take the back," she ordered, mounting the porch steps. The doorbell's chime echoed inside. No response. She tried the handle, locked. Back door locked too. Rivera radioed. No movement visible. Chun stepped back, examining the house's face. Upstairs, windows dark. A child's bedroom, probably. Basketball hoop mounted too low on the garage. Bike with training wheels chained to the porch railing. "Hartford PD," she called out, pounding on the door. Nothing. The sound of approaching sirens grew as backup arrived. "Break it down!" The door gave way with a crack of splintering wood. Chun moved in, weapon raised, Rivera now at her shoulder. The living room looked staged, every pillow perfectly placed, no toys or clutter. A family photo on the mantel showed a smiling man, woman, and boy at what looked like a baseball game. James Crawford, Sarah Bennett, and Tommy. Their file had come through during the drive over. "Clear," Rivera called from the kitchen. "Clear," echoed from the dining room. Chun mounted the stairs, each step creaking beneath her weight. The air felt heavier here, charged with unease. She paused outside a closed door, her heart pounding. Slowly, she pushed it open. The room was empty, the closet door ajar. On the floor lay a cracked iPhone, its screen still lit. The line was dead. Chun's stomach sank. Wherever Tommy was, he wasn't here anymore. And whatever James Crawford had done, it was far worse than they'd imagined. The upper hallway creaked beneath her feet, stretching dark and silent. 3 doors stood before her, the master bedroom, the bathroom, and at the end, a room adorned with a Captain America shield. Tommy's room. The closet door hung open, hangers askew, as if hastily disturbed. A cracked phone lay on the floor near an overturned chair, papers scattered like confetti across the desk. "House is clear," Rivera reported from behind her. "No sign of the boy or the stepfather." Chun holstered her weapon and crouched by the scattered papers. Math homework stared back at her, each problem meticulously worked out in careful childlike handwriting. In the margins, red ink corrections slashed through the page. Sloppy. Try harder. Disappointing. She picked up the fallen phone. Though its screen was dark, the 911 call was still connected. "Get CSU in here," she ordered sharply. "And I want every available unit canvassing the area. They can't have gone far." But even as she spoke, a nagging doubt crept into her mind. Something about this scene felt wrong, staged, like the perfect living room downstairs, a facade too polished to be real. Her gaze swept the room again, cataloging details. The Captain America shield, baseball trophies gleaming under the dim light, model airplanes suspended from the ceiling. It was a little boy's room, but one decorated by an adult's idea of what a little boy should want. She opened the closet wider. Clothes hung with military precision, sorted by color. What 8-year-old organized his clothes like that? "Detective," Officer Rivera called from downstairs. "We've got something in the kitchen." Rivera pointed to a notepad by the phone. The top sheet was blank, but Chun could see faint impressions of writing pressed into the paper below. She ran a pencil lightly across it, revealing words. "Handle the situation. Tuesday night. No loose ends." A chill ran down Chun's spine. "Get the mother on the phone," she commanded, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. "And put out a BOLO on Crawford's vehicle. Tommy Bennett is now considered at risk." As units mobilized and the search perimeter expanded, Chun stood at Tommy's window, staring out at the darkened street. Somewhere out there, a frightened 8-year-old boy was hoping someone would find him. But there was something else here. Something she was missing. A shape beneath the obvious that she couldn't quite grasp. Her phone buzzed. Sarah Bennett, the mother, was returning their call. Chun took a deep breath, steeling herself to shatter someone's world. Before she could answer, Rivera burst back in. "Detective, gas station camera may have spotted them heading north on TI-91 20 minutes ago." Chun looked once more at the perfect room, the precise closet, the harsh corrections in red ink. Then she turned away, already moving. "Find the boy first," she muttered. "Solve the puzzle later." But as she descended the stairs, that nagging feeling lingered. In 18 years of detective work, she'd learned to trust her instincts. And right now, they were screaming that this was more than a simple disappearance. She just prayed they'd find Tommy before she uncovered exactly what handling the situation meant. James Crawford had vanished with Tommy, leaving Sarah Bennett's world shattered at 6:43 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. She was walking through Hartford General's parking garage, her scrubs still carrying the antiseptic smell of the emergency room, when her phone lit up with 17 missed calls. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Detective Diana Chun's voice explained that her son was missing, her husband was gone, and her home was now a crime scene. The words reached her through a tunnel of increasing darkness, each one hitting like a physical blow. "Mrs. Bennett? Are you still there?" Sarah's knees buckled. She sank onto the cold concrete, her back against her Honda's tire. A security guard found her 10 minutes later, still clutching her phone, still trying to breathe around the hole that had opened in her chest. The drive home was a blur. She kept expecting to wake up, to find herself back in the ER dealing with another trauma case. But this wasn't someone else's tragedy anymore. This was hers. Yellow police tape crossed her front door like angry scars. 2 uniformed officers stepped forward as she parked, but Detective Chun emerged from the house and waved them back. Sarah had imagined the detective differently during their phone call, older, harder. Instead, she saw a woman probably her own age, early 40s, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Bennett," Chun said, extending her hand. "I know this is overwhelming, but we need to move quickly. Can you come inside and help us understand what might have happened?" Sarah nodded, unable to trust her voice. The house felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Violated by the presence of forensics teams and uniformed officers. In the kitchen, her coffee cup from yesterday still sat in the sink. Had it only been yesterday morning when she'd hugged Tommy goodbye, promising to bring him pancakes after her shift? "Tell me about Tuesday," Chun prompted, guiding her to the dining room table. "Anything unusual? Any changes in routine?" Sarah closed her eyes, forcing herself to think clinically, like she did with difficult cases in the ER. "I worked the night shift, like usual. Left around 6 p.m. James was helping Tommy with homework. They were..." Her voice cracked. "They were going to have spaghetti for dinner. Tommy's favorite." "And James?" Chun asked gently. "How was he acting?" "Normal. Completely normal. He's a good father to Tommy, a good husband." She paused, shaking her head. "This doesn't make any sense." Chun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "We found some concerning things in Tommy's room. Homework assignments with harsh corrections. Would you say James was strict about academics?" "He wanted Tommy to do well," Sarah defended automatically. But memories were surfacing now, pushing through the shock. Tommy's increasing quietness over the past year, his reluctance to have friends over, the way he sometimes flinched when James moved too quickly. She'd attributed it to normal adjustment issues in blended families. Had she been blind to something darker? "Mrs. Bennett," Chun said gently. "We have security footage from a gas station on I-91 showing a man." The upper hallway groaned under her weight, stretching dark and silent like a forgotten corridor in an old house. 3 doors lined the space: the master bedroom, the bathroom, and at the far end, a room adorned with a Captain America shield, a child's sanctuary, or so it seemed. Tommy's room. The closet door stood ajar, hangers swaying slightly as though disturbed by unseen hands. A cracked phone lay on the floor, its screen fractured like broken glass, while nearby, a chair lay overturned, papers scattered across the desk like fallen leaves. "The house is clear," Rivera reported from behind her, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. "No sign of the boy or the stepfather." Chun holstered her weapon and crouched beside the mess of papers. Math homework stared back at her, each problem meticulously worked out in careful childish handwriting. In the margins, red ink corrections barked their judgments. Sloppy. Try harder. Disappointing. She picked up the shattered phone. The 911 call was still connected, though the screen remained dark. "Get CSU in here," she ordered sharply. "And I want every available unit canvassing the area. They can't have gone far." But even as the words left her lips, doubt crept into her mind. Something about this scene felt wrong, staged. Like the pristine living room downstairs, this room screamed perfection, but not the kind that came naturally. Her gaze swept over the details again. The Captain America shield, baseball trophies gleaming proudly, model airplanes suspended mid-flight from the ceiling. It looked like a little boy's dream, but one curated by an adult's vision of what a little boy should want. She opened the closet wider. Clothes hung with military precision, sorted by color. What 8-year-old organized his wardrobe like that? "Detective!" Officer Rivera called from downstairs. Chun descended to find him pointing at a notepad by the kitchen phone. The top sheet was blank, but faint impressions of writing lingered beneath. Running a pencil lightly across the surface, words emerged. "Handle the situation. Tuesday night. No loose ends." Her stomach churned. "Get the mother on the phone," Chun commanded, her voice tight. "And put out a BOLO on Crawford's vehicle. Tommy Bennett is now considered at risk." As units mobilized and the search perimeter widened, Chun returned to Tommy's window, staring out into the shadowy street. Somewhere out there, a frightened 8-year-old boy was hoping someone would find him. But something else lingered here. Something just beyond her grasp, a shape beneath the obvious she couldn't quite decipher. Her phone buzzed. Sarah Bennett was returning their call. Taking a deep breath, Chun prepared to shatter someone's world. Before she could answer, Rivera burst back in. "Detective! Gas station camera may have spotted them heading north on I-91, 20 minutes ago." Chun glanced once more at the perfect room, the precise closet, the harsh red corrections, and turned away, already moving. Find the boy first, solve the puzzle later. But as she descended the stairs, that nagging feeling clung to her like a shadow. 18 years of detective work had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now they were screaming that this wasn't just a simple disappearance. She prayed they'd find Tommy before uncovering exactly what handling the situation meant. James Crawford ensured Sarah Bennett's world ended at 6:43 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. She was walking through Hartford General's parking garage, the antiseptic smell of the ER still clinging to her scrubs, when her phone lit up with 17 missed calls. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in sterile white as Detective Diana Chun's voice explained that her son was missing, her husband gone, her home now a crime scene. The words reached her through a tunnel of encroaching darkness, each one landing like a physical blow. "Mrs. Bennett? Are you still there?" Sarah's knees buckled. She sank onto the cold concrete, her back against her Honda's tire, clutching her phone as if it might anchor her to reality. A security guard found her 10 minutes later, still trying to breathe around the gaping hole that had opened in her chest. The drive home was a blur. She kept expecting to wake up, to find herself back in the ER dealing with another trauma case. But this wasn't someone else's tragedy anymore. It was hers. Yellow police tape slashed across her front door like angry scars. 2 uniformed officers stepped forward as she parked, but Detective Chun emerged from the house and waved them back. Sarah had imagined the detective differently during their phone call. Older, harder. Instead, she saw a woman probably her own age, early 40s, with short black hair and eyes that carried the weight of too many truths. "Mrs. Bennett," Chun said, extending her hand. "I know this is overwhelming, but we need to move quickly. Can you come inside and help us understand what might have happened?" Sarah nodded, unable to trust her voice. The house felt alien. Too quiet. Too still. Forensics teams moved methodically, their presence violating the sanctity of her home. In the kitchen, her coffee cup from yesterday still sat in the sink. Had it only been yesterday morning when she'd hugged Tommy goodbye, promising pancakes after her shift? "Tell me about Tuesday," Chun prompted, guiding her to the dining room table. "Anything unusual? Any changes in routine?" Sarah closed her eyes, forcing herself to think clinically, as she did with difficult cases in the ER. I worked the night shift like usual. Left around 6 p.m. James was helping Tommy with homework. Her voice cracked. They were going to have spaghetti for dinner, Tommy's favorite. And James, how was he acting? Normal. Completely normal. He's a good father to Tommy, a good husband. She hesitated, the words tasting sour now. This doesn't make any sense. Chun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. We found some concerning things in Tommy's room. Homework assignments with harsh corrections. Would you say James was strict about academics? He wanted Tommy to do well, Sarah defended automatically. But memories began surfacing, pushing through the shock. Tommy's increasing quietness over the past year, his reluctance to invite friends over, the way he sometimes flinched when James moved too quickly. She'd attributed it to normal adjustment issues in blended families. Had she been blind to something darker? Mrs. Bennett, Chun said gently. We have security footage from a gas station on I-91 showing a man matching James's description. Matching James's description with a child time stamped about 20 minutes after Tommy's 911 call. The image is unclear, but 911 call. Sarah interrupted. What 911 call? Chen's face softened with realization. We haven't played it for you yet. Would you like to hear it? Sarah nodded, though everything in her screamed. Not to Chun produced a tablet, tapped the screen, and suddenly Tommy's voice filled the room. Small, frightened, nothing like her bright, chatty boy. Please help me. Is my stepdad James Crawford. 47 Maple Street. I'm scared. The recording continued, capturing the sounds of discovery of fear. Sarah pressed her hands to her mouth, trying to hold back a scream that felt centuries old. How had she not known? How had she not seen? There's something else, Chun said after Sarah had regained some composure. We found this in James's study. She slid over a photograph of a notepad. Words in hands, to show the impression. Handle the situation. Tuesday night. No. Loose ends. No. Sarah whispered. No. There has to be an explanation. James wouldn't. He couldn't. But even as she spoke, memories clicked into place like shards of broken glass. James's insistence on handling all the household paperwork, the way he'd slowly taken control of her finances, claiming it was to help, while she focused on her medical career. The subtle isolation from friends and family, the changes in Tommy's behavior. Oh God, she breathed. What did I let into our lives? This isn't your fault, Chun said firmly. Right now. We focus on finding Tommy. I need you to think, does James have any properties? Any connections outside the area? Places he might go? Sarah shook her head, then stopped. Wait, the summer house. His family's old place in Vermont. He said he sold it years ago, but last month I found a property tax bill. I thought I was mistaken. Chin was already moving, calling out orders to her team. Sarah sat at her dining room table, staring at her trembling hands. Morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the dust. Mo's disturbed by the police activity, such ordinary light for a day that had shattered her world. A young officer approached with a cup of coffee. She hadn't asked for as she reached for it. Her eyes caught on something through the kitchen doorway. A slight discoloration on the basement doorframe, as if something heavy had recently scraped against it. She started to mention it to Chan, but the detective was already on the phone coordinating with Vermont authorities about the summer house lead. Sarah sipped the coffee, barely tasting it, somewhere out there. Her son was afraid and alone. She'd failed to protect him once, she wouldn't fail him again. But as the morning wore on, and more officers arrived to process the scene, that mark on the basement doorframe kept drawing her attention. Something about it felt important, though she couldn't say why. Like Tommy's voice calling out for help in her memory. It was a detail that refused to fade into the background of her dissolving world. Outside, the November wind picked up, rattling bare branches against the windows. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, fighting a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. She'd worked enough trauma cases to know the first 48 hours were critical in missing persons cases. The clock on the wall read 8:17 a.m. Time was already running out. Detective Diana Chun stood in the gathering dusk of Wednesday evening, watching crime scene technicians move through the Crawford Bennett house with methodical precision. The November wind had picked up, carrying the first hint of winter, and leaves skittered across the driveway. Like nervous animals, 17 hours had passed since. Tommy's call each minute felt like a personal failure. The gas station footage had proven frustrating. The timestamp matched 8:12 p.m. Tuesday, but the video quality was poor. The figures glimpsed through a rain-strewn window. A man in a dark coat, a child-sized shape beside him could have been James, and Tommy could have been any one detective officer. Rivera approached, his breath visible in the cold air. State police found Crawford's car, chin turned, instantly alert, were abandoned at a rest stop near the Massachusetts border, empty. But they found this. He handed her an evidence bag containing a child's baseball cap. Red Sox logo. The same one Tommy wore in the family photo on the mantle. Too obvious chin. Thought like the perfectly arranged living room. The meticulously organized closet. Everything about this scene felt calculated. Performed. She'd seen enough domestic cases to know that controlling personalities didn't snap randomly. They escalated, planned, orchestrated inside the house. She made her way back to the basement door. Something about this space had been nagging at her since her first walk through the basement itself was unremarkable. Washer, dryer, storage shelves arranged with military precision, but the dimensions felt wrong. The room didn't extend as far as it should. Given the house's foundation, Mrs. Bennett Chun called up the stairs. Sarah appeared at the top, looking ghostly in the harsh police lighting. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten despite the officer's attempts to convince her. "Can you come down here?" Sarah descended carefully, one hand trailing along the wall. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, making her look older than her driver's license photo. "What is it? Tell me about the renovations James did down here last spring," Sarah said, looking around as if seeing the space for the first time. "He said the moisture barrier needed updating, spent weeks on it, insisted on doing the work himself." Chun ran her hand along the cinderblock wall. "Did he ever mention anything about the original construction features of the older foundation?" Sarah started to shake her head, then stopped. Tommy, you used to talk about a secret room, said he found it playing hide and seek. I thought he was Detective James," was skeptical. Her voice caught. "James. Children his age often invent stories for attention." But Chen's pulse quickened. She turned sharply to the forensics team still combing through the scene. "I want ground-penetrating radar down here. Full structural scan. And get me the original building plans from the city archives." The rest of the evening dissolved into a blur of activity. The radar equipment arrived, technicians setting up their gear while Chun coordinated with teams following the Vermont summer house lead. Sarah moved between the kitchen and living room like a ghost, answering questions mechanically, her eyes constantly straying to the front door as if expecting Tommy to walk in at any moment. At midnight, Chen's phone buzzed. The Vermont State Police had reached the summer house. It was empty, no signs of recent occupancy. Another dead end, another hour lost. She was studying the basement blueprints when Rivera rushed in, his face flushed with cold. "Detective, we've got a witness. A gas station attendant from the I-91 location says he remembers Crawford and the boy. They bought snacks, headed north." Chun looked up sharply. "When did he come forward?" "Just now. Says he saw the news, recognized them." Too convenient, thought Chun. Like the baseball cap left behind, the notepad, the abandoned car. All of it felt like breadcrumbs leading them away. But from what? She spread the blueprints across a table, comparing them to the radar readouts. The technology showed density variations in the walls, spaces that shouldn't exist. And there, in the corner behind the storage shelves. "Mrs. Bennett," Chun called out. Sarah appeared in the doorway, clutching a fresh cup of coffee. "He touched you," she said suddenly. "Tommy mentioned a secret room. Did he ever say where, how he found it?" Sarah's brow furrowed. He said it was behind his fortress. That's what he called the big storage shelves. James got angry when he talked about it. Said the basement wasn't a place for games." Chun turned back to the blueprints, her heart racing. The house had been built in 1951, during the height of the Cold War. Many homes from that era had fallout shelters, many later sealed up and forgotten, but not forgotten by everyone. She was about to order the shelving unit moved when her radio crackled. Another reported sighting, this time at a motel near the Vermont border. James Crawford checking in with a sleeping child in his arms. Chun looked at the basement wall, then at her radio. The witness seemed credible. The motel lead felt solid. Every investigative instinct told her to pursue it. But as she turned to head upstairs, a sound stopped her. Faint, barely audible over the hum of police equipment. Something falling behind the wall. The flashlight beam caught Sarah's face, hope and terror warring in her expression. They both heard it now. A soft impact, like a metal object hitting concrete. "Get those shelves moved," Chun ordered, her voice cutting through the stale basement air as her team scrambled to respond. She couldn't shake the feeling that they'd been playing someone else's game all along. The real question wasn't where James Crawford had taken Tommy. The question was where Tommy had managed to hide from James. And were they already too late to find out? Chapter 5. Buried Secrets. Thursday morning arrived with a crystalline frost coating the windows of the Crawford-Bennett home. Detective Chun sat at the dining room table, surrounded by papers from James Crawford's personnel file. Each document revealed another layer of a life carefully constructed to appear normal, even exemplary. Teacher of the year at his previous school in Rochester, Little League coach with a perfect winning record, glowing references that seemed too polished, too uniform in their praise. But there were gaps, careful omissions that Chun had spent the early morning hours uncovering. 3 schools in 10 years, each departure preceded by parent complaints that never made it to official records, concerns about his excessive attention to struggling students, all quietly resolved before any formal investigation could begin. Detective Sarah's voice drew Chun's attention. Tommy's mother stood in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her hospital ID badge hanging forgotten around her neck. "I found something in James's study," she said, placing a leather-bound journal on the table. "It was hidden behind the filing cabinet. I never looked through his private things before." Chun opened the journal carefully, noting the precise handwriting, the methodical dating of each entry. The latest entry was dated Tuesday morning. T becoming problematic. Intervention required. S remains unaware of situation. Will proceed with contingency. "I don't understand," Sarah whispered, her hands trembling as she sank into a chair. "What situation? What was he planning?" Before Chun could respond, Officer Rivera entered with a stack of blueprints from the city archives. "Detective, you need to see this." He spread the blueprints across the table. There, in the basement corner behind where the storage shelves now stood, was a detailed diagram of a fallout shelter. Notes in the margins specified reinforced concrete walls, a ventilation system, emergency water storage. "James knew," Sarah said suddenly. "When we bought the house, he was so interested in the basement. Spent hours down there before we even moved in. Said he was checking for structural issues." Chun's phone buzzed. The forensics team had completed their initial analysis of the gas station security footage. The timestamp had been altered. The image of James and Tommy leaving the station was from weeks ago. A normal father-son outing repurposed to create a false lead. "Mrs. Bennett," Chun said firmly, "we need to move those storage shelves. Now, not later. Not after checking the Vermont lead. Now." The basement air hung thick with decades of accumulated dust as the team carefully began dismantling the heavy storage system. Each shelf had been bolted to the floor and wall with industrial-grade hardware, far more secure than necessary for simple storage. Detective Rivera stood in the dimly lit basement, consulting a set of blueprints spread across an old workbench. The air smelled faintly of damp concrete and dust. Behind him, shelves lined the walls. Meticulous rows of neatly stacked boxes that seemed almost too perfect. As he traced his finger along the blueprint's faded lines, Chun paced nearby, mentally piecing together what they knew. James Crawford, a man who built lives as carefully as he crafted appearances. He had chosen this house years ago, perhaps even before meeting Sarah Bennett. And then there was the renovation, months spent transforming the basement into something more than it appeared. Shelves upon shelves, designed not just for storage, but for concealment. Somewhere here lay the entrance to a hidden shelter. "Detective!" one of the officers called out, breaking the tense silence. "We found something." Chun hurried over, her sharp eyes scanning the last section of shelving. There, concealed behind layers of deception, was a patch of wall newer than its surroundings. Fresh concrete blended seamlessly with the older surface, expertly applied to avoid suspicion. But if you knew where to look and how to see, you could make out the faint outline of a heavy steel door. "Get the cutting equipment down here," Chun ordered sharply. "And I want EMTs standing by." Sarah Bennett pressed her hands against the cold concrete, tears streaming down her face. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Tommy? Tommy, can you hear me?" Silence answered her, save for the metallic clatter of tools being brought in. Upstairs windows were dark, a child's bedroom probably. Basketball hoop mounted too low on the garage, bike with training wheels chained to the porch railing. "Hartford PD!" she called out, pounding on the door. Nothing. The sound of approaching sirens grew as backup arrived. "Break it down!" The door gave way with a crack of splintering wood. Chun moved in, weapon raised, Rivera now at her shoulder. The living room looked staged. Every pillow perfectly placed, no toys or clutter. A family photo sat on the mantel, smiling. Tommy Bennett stared at the glowing numbers on his nightstand clock until they blurred into a haze. 7:43 p.m. His mom wouldn't be home until morning. Another late shift at Hartford General. The room was quiet except for the November wind rattling his bedroom window and the faint creak of floorboards downstairs. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed up the staircase in a pattern Tommy knew all too well. James was coming. Tommy clutched Mr. Waddles, his old stuffed penguin, tighter under the blanket. At 8 years old, he knew he was probably too old for stuffed animals, but Mr. Waddles had been with him since before James, before the quiet fear that lived like a knot in his stomach, never quite going away. "Time for homework," James's voice called from the bottom of the stairs. Check. Homework checked. Each problem on Tommy's math sheet had been worked out in careful pencil strokes, triple-checked for mistakes. But what if it wasn't good enough? Last week, James had torn up his science project because one of the planet names was misspelled. "Sloppy work reflects a sloppy mind," he'd said, his fake smile never reaching his eyes. "We'll keep this between us, sport. Don't want to worry your mother." Tommy slid off his bed, sock feet silent on the hardwood floor. He glanced at the cell phone hidden in his pocket, the old iPhone his mom had given him for emergencies only. She didn't know he kept it charged after James declared he was too young for a phone. Tommy had seen enough TV to know about 911, about what it meant to call them. But was this an emergency? James hadn't hit him. Not yet. It was everything else. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Tommy's hand trembled as he pulled out the phone. Its screen glowed dimly in the growing darkness of his room. His finger hovered over the keypad. That morning, he'd overheard James talking on the phone in his study, speaking in that cold, calculating tone he used when he thought no one was listening. "The boy's becoming a problem. He's asking too many questions. We need to handle this." The words had sent ice through Tommy's veins. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Panicked, Tommy ducked into his closet, sliding behind the hanging shirts and pulling the door nearly closed. The phone shook in his hand as he dialed 3 numbers. Just 3 numbers. 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice was female, gentle. Tommy opened his mouth but no sound came out. "Hello? Is anyone there? Please? Please help me," Tommy whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's my stepdad, James Crawford. 47 Maple Street. I'm scared." "Are you in danger right now? Can you tell me your name?" "Tommy. Tommy Bennett." The closet door flew open. James stood there, silhouetted against the bedroom light. His dress shirt was perfectly pressed, his tie neatly knotted at his throat. A history teacher everyone loved, who coached Little League in the summer. But his eyes were different now. "What are you doing in here, sport?" James's voice was soft, almost gentle. The phone slipped from Tommy's numb fingers, clattering to the closet floor. He saw James's gaze track the movement, saw the exact moment understanding dawned on his stepfather's face. The mask of kindness cracked. "What have you done?" James whispered. Tommy scrambled backward deeper into the closet, but there was nowhere to go. James reached for him, and Tommy saw his own terror reflected in the lenses of his stepfather's wire-rimmed glasses. The last thing Tommy heard was the 911 operator's tiny, distant voice from the fallen phone. "Units are on their way. Tommy? Tommy, are you there?" Then James's hand closed around his arm, and the world shifted into a nightmare of motion and fear. Tommy knew, with a certainty that went bone deep, that he had to get away, had to hide, had to survive. He just didn't know if he could. Detective Diana Chun killed the sirens 2 blocks from 47 Maple Street, but left the lights flashing. The November night had settled early over the suburban street, holiday decorations already twinkling in neighboring windows. 8 minutes had passed since the 911 call. Too long. "Dispatch, Unit 14 on scene," she spoke into her radio, drawing her weapon as Officer Mike Rivera pulled up behind her. The 2-story colonial looked peaceful. Lights on downstairs, an SUV in the driveway. A teacher's house, a family home.